Hello, and welcome back to Let's Talk About It podcast with Dennis. We are focused on the journey to happiness, success, and becoming the best version of you. If you still haven't got the chance to listen to our first episode, I highly recommend you to do it right now for you getting a little bit of a better sense of things. If you already have, perfect. Just as I said in the previous episode, this journey is going to take some time, some effort, but most importantly, it's going to take an open mind. Now, it might sound a little bit overwhelming, but worry not, because we're right here with you and we're going to set on this journey together. And with each episode, step by step, slowly, we're going to come closer and closer to unlocking the best version of you. Now, on this episode, we're going to focus on the basic understanding and a great philosophical question that one must ask before you can even start accepting that everything can be altered and changed, starting with our mind and our perception of reality. And that is, of course, the great question of who are you? On this episode, we will discuss why it's important to ask this question and why the answer is not as simple as you might think. All that and more right after the intro.
Life is not easy. It is not. Don't try to make it that way. Life's not fair. It never was. It isn't now, and it won't
Said you
ever
can
be.
fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing
It's
what
about
you
how hard
love.
you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can
If
take.
you see it in your mind, you can hold it in your
I want to
hand.
remind you to continue to dream and dream big.
Let me tell you something, visualizing your goal and going after it makes it fun. You've got to have a purpose no matter what you do in life.
Reggie Jackson struck out 2,600 times in his career, the most in the history of baseball. But you don't hear about the strikeouts. People remember the home runs. Fall forward.
Wow, gives me the goosebumps every time. So, when was the real last time you actually thought or asked yourself, who am I? Now, I'm not talking about the fun way to introduce yourself in a party or a new group that you met, where you tell your age, your name, and a few hobbies. No, I'm talking about digging deeper. Diving into this thought, letting fill you up. Now, to understand why this question is important, we must go a few steps back and to understand where this question comes from. You see, to understand how different people view and relate to success or happiness, for the matter of fact, we must first understand who are we as people? What is our identity? And ask this difficult question of who we are, not to our friends, not to our parents, not to our spouses, partners, business partners, or any one of these. Because you see, a lot of people, the first time they are asked who are they immediately run to saying or categorizing themselves as somebody in comparison to or for someone, or I'm good at sports, so I am a sportsman, or I don't know, I'm good at math, so I'm a mathematician. And you see, it's just so far from what this question really asks you. Because once you strip all those things away and you take just yourself in front of a mirror with no one to impress, with just yourself and an honest answer that you need to give, what is left? Now, I know that this might be a little bit overwhelming, but fear not. Many people deal with this question for the first time in the same way. And first, you might feel like you're empty, an empty vessel without a question, without an answer, and that's okay. Trust me that it's, first of all, far from the reality. You are someone. You're definitely someone. You're a character, a soul on a journey of life, experiencing everything around you in your own unique way. And that's already something. So, first is the obvious thing to ask the question. And now that you ask the question and you understand that the answer is not as simple as you think, you need to dig a little deeper and start thinking about it. Because you see, who you are is not your emotions about anything, is not really your opinions about anything, is not how you feel today, is not if you are tired, it's not any of these things. Who you are truly and really is after you strip all those things, all those things that eventually come from you or affected by who you see yourself as. Because only then you can understand who you truly are. And that's where we start to understand why is there such a difference between what people view or categorize as happiness or success, for the matter of fact. Because let me ask you a simple question. Do you think that two people can view success and happiness exactly the same way, 100%? Well, the answer is no, because there will always be a difference. These differences can come from a lot of things. It starts with experiences, traumas, or maybe to the other side, like good experiences and background from where this person came or where he grew up, or social differences and cultural differences. That's just the tip of the iceberg of what can affect your view. The other one is the first thing I think that comes to mind, especially for somebody who is a little bit familiar to psychology. And it's the question of what this person lacks in life. Because I think you can agree with me that a person that is always full and never experiences hunger will not think that success is about not worrying about the next meal. On the other hand, a person who starves constantly might be the happiest person when you serve him a meal, and he might consider success as reaching a point where he doesn't need to worry about his next meal. You know what I mean? Now, with that in mind, when we are speaking about who we are, and we start to finally understanding that it's not that simple of an answer, and we need to dig a little bit deeper inside ourselves, only then we can start formalizing some sort of an understanding of what is the real happiness for me? What is the real point of success for me? And then we can start forming our plan, our strategy, setting our goals, starting from the small ones and up to the big one, right up there. And we can start working our way to reach it. Now, that's all beautiful when it sounds in the theoretical form on paper, you know? But to understand it more in the practical sense, we need to dig a little bit in this subject and to understand it more. A good example that I like to give is how Thomas Metzinger described oneself in his book, The Ego Tunnel. You see, throughout the book, he's truly trying to argue that one's self, this identity that we hold within us, it's not a fixed entity, but it's more of a process that our brain created to help us in navigating in our world, in our reality, and eventually helping us kind of survive and reach where we really want to go. So if we take that in account, and if we really understand what is said there, we start to realize that he's actually saying that just like someone's opinion or point of view, they can be shaped or changed depending on our experience in life. And not just our experience, sometimes encounters or facts or whatever it will be. It means that external factors can shape our view and character, which are a big part of our true identity. So if that is true, I think it's more than safe to assume that internal factors can alter our mind and perception as well. Think about it. Just like I said, a person that comes from a life of prosperity, he was, how would you say it, fed with a silver spoon. He never felt the lack of anything. I'm talking about physical, all right? Obviously, this person will have different views, and his mind will be shaped a lot differently around the physical and around the non-physical, because he never felt the lack of money, of food, of shelter, clothes. So obviously he won't appreciate them as much as somebody who always felt the lack of these things or always struggled to get his next meal or to put clothes on his back or to get to a point where he has a roof over his head. These are two different people with different realities that they came from and backgrounds, which forced them to appreciate things differently and see them differently. You might say and safely assume that the person that didn't feel the lack of these physical things and needs was a lot more free to focus and think about other things. While the person who was always struggling to get the next meal, I think he wasn't too free to think about the romantic side of life, the philosophical sides of how or why or who. So we can safely assume that if these external things can shape us, why can't the internal? Why can't my decision of wanting to be better, happier, healthier, why can't these affect my mind and my reality just as much? Now, it's true that they are different levels of effect, because something that is physical has a lot more, has an undoubting effect because it's something that you can feel, see, hold in your hand. It doesn't matter from which category it comes. But as long as it's something physical and real, we have an easier time to believe in it, you know? You know the sentence, I'll believe it when I'll see it? Well, that's the same. It's a lot easier to believe in something when you see it, when you hear it, when you can hold it in your hand. It's physical, it's real. Now, when we're talking about something that is abstract, an idea, something that is inside us, something that you can't really touch, can't really comprehend or measure, that's where the tricky part starts. And that's where we need to put a little bit of extra work and faith to not even make, but to teach our mind to accept these things as something that can have an impact on the world just as much. Now, as a little task, I would like to ask you, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I think it will really help you. For the next, let's say, week, every day, when you start your day, or when you end it, doesn't matter, but choose a certain time so you will be able to commit to it. And at that time, for the next 7 days, you're gonna find yourself either in front of a mirror where you look at yourself, or in a place of your comfort, preferably in silence, meditating, and you will be asking this question. You will be asking, who am I? And every day you will write what you came up with and you will put it on the side. Now, in the end of these 7 days, I would like you to see what you wrote on the first day and how it changed throughout these days. Sometimes it will be maybe something similar, but with different words. Sometimes you will see that it actually evolved and your idea and your thought grew deeper and deeper. And that's just a touch of the impact that it will give to you, because it will be just 7 days. But imagine if you did it for 1 month, or maybe a year, or how about every single day? Because when you realize that who you are can be affected by many things, many factors from the external, but it might as well be affected from internal factors and what you choose to give power and shape your reality and shape your view and shape your mind. You kind of already switch yourself from the state of being on autopilot to being aware, being really experiencing life, really knowing that everything kind of has a consequence. Now, I'm not trying to scare you in that. That's not the point. It's exactly the opposite, actually. It's a beautiful thing to understand that once it happens to you, you realize how unaware you were until now. And after you realize that, you will really start focusing on what is worth your energy, what really is worth your time, what really is worth your concentration, and what you should receive your full attention. When you do that, you will start automatically filtering everything. You will start asking yourself, how is this action right now serving me? Is it getting me closer to any of my goals? Is it making me feel better right now? It's just a momentarily feel of dopamine, It will kind of be the beginning of the process of actually understanding that each thing you do in your life will have consequences. And your finite resources of time and energy are being at use right now. And all of a sudden, things that you thought that were impossible to let go of are a lot easier to. And I will give you an example from me. I often ask myself, is what I'm doing right now really bringing me closer to my goals? Is it serving my goals? But my favorite question is, after once that I imagined the perfect version of me, the best one, that somewhere exists in an alter reality or the future, it doesn't matter where you said it. But I ask myself, is what I'm doing going in the same line of something that the best version of me would have done? It really helps me to guide myself like some sort of a compass. guiding my decisions, my thoughts, my actions. And that's something that I highly recommend you to try. One of the places where I had like the biggest trouble, which I think a lot of people will relate, and it's stupid. I know that it's stupid, but it was always hard for me, is road rage. I literally, until today, struggle with that subject. Because you see, for me, the fact that some human being that is operating a vehicle treats it like a joke and it doesn't give the serious thought that he's right now risking people's life, not just his, but other people's lives, and it can drive me crazy, you know? So anger with for many different reasons on the road can take advantage of me, and I can really get frustrated with people, and I hate people when I'm driving. So eventually I started asking myself, why? Why are you letting this moment ruin all of your day and your mood just because of this moment? Was it dangerous right now, like the way he cut you? And yes, for sure it was, no doubt. But will it make it better that you are angry? No. Will it somehow change the situation? No. Will it probably influence your day and not for the best? Yes. So I kind of learned to start letting go. I'm still in my process here because, like I said, this is my weak point. I'm still working on it. But in many other aspects, I really found myself that it's working. Sometimes, choose your battles. Sometimes it's not worth the fight because you're not gonna change somebody's opinion by fighting them over it or forcing them to have your opinion. That's not how it works. So, and especially if people that you see that are so stubborn with a certain agenda or idea that is for them fitting perfectly in their reality, sometimes it doesn't have to change because it's different from you. And you can still not agree with it. It's perfectly fine. You can just let them be. Just let them be. It's okay. And I'm not talking about the question of racism. If somebody wants to exterminate a whole race, or he thinks that some are better and some are worse, and no, I'm not going there right now. These are very deep subjects that sometimes are even worth debating on. But that's not what I'm talking about right now. What I mean to say is that you can really change the way you view reality. But it starts with one single spark or switch that for some it can be a moment, a defining moment in life. For some, it can be a therapist that asks them right this question that we started with: who are you? For others, it can be the realization that they came to when they had enough time disconnected from all distractions around them and they actually sat down to think. Because you see, many of us, and many of you listeners right there, you are amazing beings, amazing creative machines that are just out there with infinite potential. And it's being pressed and wasted on meaningless little things, like getting more likes on your post on Instagram, or watching this stupid TV show that never ends and you keep complaining that it never ends, but you keep watching it. Or maybe the job that you don't like and you waste so much energy on. There are so many things that just don't really matter, and you keep letting them take away your time and distract you from what really matters. And what really matters is what's inside. And you need to really start finding the time to ask yourself and to dig inside you to find these answers. What does matter to you? What is worth the fight, the battle? What is your ultimate goal? What did you feel that happened to you that made you appreciate other things different from other people? Do you think that it should stay the same way? Or maybe you should change your priorities for 1 second? You need to start questioning all the things that you took for granted. This is when the real wake-up call comes. This is where you really start to realize that you had no idea what was happening until now. But now you're starting to get a clue. Now you're starting to put a hand on the wheel and actually driving this car somewhere. And then, when you really fully understand that you are at the wheel, you understand that you can navigate it wherever you want. And it's all up to you. Now, all this connects to another subject that I really think that is important enough to talk about, and it's the spotlight effect. Now, the spotlight effect says that all of us, every single one of us mortals, we tend to think that we are constantly being observed, discussed, judged by every single one around us. And that's perfectly normal, because this feeling of self that I just described and that Thomas describes in his book is just programmed and created by our mind to feel like we are the main character of this story. And it's true. To each one of us, we are the main character of the story. We're also the producers and the writers, and we choose what we're gonna wear and what music will play in the background. We choose everything, really. But we don't realize that because it feels that way for us, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody sees us the same way, because we forget that for each one of us, it's the same. And trust me when I'm saying that most of the time, when you are worried or overthinking of what others might think, you should remember that they have their own movie running right now. And they need to remember their own lines and their own character and their own goals and subjects and whatever is going on inside or outside of them. So trust me that they don't have the time or the mental capacity to be judging you every single moment like you think they do. So, with taking that in account, you should realize that this spotlight that you feel is a little bit exaggerated. And I mean it in the nicest way possible. Because, yes, you are the hero of your story, and you should take it to the best place you can. Because trying to live life for the fullest, being the best version of you, and showing yourself what an amazing life you can have is the only fight that is worth fighting for. Truly. Trust me when I'm telling you this. And you will start experiencing it and feeling just a glimpse of it when you will start actually opening your eyes and becoming more aware of your day-to-day life. That's when you will start noticing that you argue less with people on things that don't really matter. You spend less energy at being angry and you spend more energy at creating and building. And you will start realizing what in your life is worth your time. And you will see that all of that takes you and your ship to a whole new water. You will be in rocky waters first, because it's going to go up and it's going to go down and it's going to go up and it's going to go down again. But you will find the hang of it, and you will realize that you are the one controlling the sails and the wheel, and eventually, even the water. Because the water is just a reflection of how you perceive your reality. And that's connecting to something that I think it was probably some Indian guru. Definitely an Indian guru. Don't remember who exactly, but it was definitely an Indian guru who said, when you're facing a problem in life, the most important question that you should ask yourself is, why worry? And now you're thinking, well, it's easy to say, it's harder to do, but honestly, the more aware you are of the situation, the easier it gets. And I'll explain why. He also says, like, it's very simple. There's a very simple lineup of questions that you should ask yourself when you're facing an obstacle or a problem. Is it something that you can do something about it? If the answer is yes, perfect. Why worry? You have a problem, you have a solution or a plan what to do about it. You shouldn't worry then. Worrying won't help anyone. And if the answer is no, well, you have a problem that has no solution. Will worry make it any better? No, it won't. So why worry? Now, a lot of these things sound super easy on paper, and you're probably thinking, well, it's easier how it sounds than it is in actual practice. But trust me that all these things, the more you will try and practice them and stay consistent, that's the most important. Stay consistent. Create them as a habit of how you operate as a new. You will notice that they really start to become part of your way of thinking, of your way of operating, of your way of perceiving things that happen to you. Now, because we're talking already about things that can happen to you, I would like to tell one of my favorite stories. It's about a Chinese farmer in a small village. And he's a pretty poor farmer. He has an elder son, and they always need to work very hard to produce something on the soil and grow something so they can sell it and eat and survive in general. So, and they have one horse, just one horse that helps them with all the chores, takes them whenever they need, helps them to plow the ground, whatever. And one day, this horse just runs away. Of course, all the villagers know about it, and they come to this Chinese farmer, and they say, "Oh my God, we are so sorry to hear it. It's so terrible. It's terrible news. What are you gonna do?" And he's like, "I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm gonna think about it." And everybody's obviously like, "What? What does he mean? How can it not be good? How can it not be bad? You know?" And the next day, what do you know? The horse comes back, and it brings two more horses that it met with it. So everybody gathers again, and they say, "Oh my God, that's amazing. You had one, and now you have three horses. That's great news." And he's again thinking and saying, "I'm not sure if it's good or bad. I'm gonna think about it. I don't know yet." And they said, well, what do you think? What do you mean? What is there to think about, you know? It's great news. From being poor, you just gained 2 new horses. That's amazing. And what do you know? The next day, his oldest son, who was his biggest help in everything, and he goes for a ride on one of these wild horses that came back with their horse. And he goes for a ride, and the horse gets scared of something, and it drops him, and he falls and breaks his back. And so the boy is now very badly hurt and is depending on his dad even more, which already has a tough life. And again, all the village gathers and, oh my God, that's so terrible. He broke his back. What are we going to do? That's probably terrible news. How do you feel? And the dad once more thinks about it and says, I'm not sure if it's good or bad yet. I'm going to think about it. And what do you know? The next day, a war starts somewhere in China. So they sent to every single village to gather troops. Everybody who is combat worthy, who can hold a weapon, is gonna be recruited and enlisted to the army. And they go from village to village, and they reach this village, and they see that the boy is hurt and it's got a broken back. So obviously they didn't take him. And so once again, the villagers gather and say, "Oh my God, that's amazing news! Your boy was saved, and probably saved from certain death of war, you know." And the moral of this story, because I can just keep going, the moral of the story is things happen, always have been, and always will. And at first, they can look good or they can look bad. But never be quick to judge. And never, but never let it dictate on how you're going to perceive your reality from now on. Because sometimes the good things happen to prepare you for bad, and sometimes it's exactly the opposite. Bad things happen to save you from a greater worse, or to prepare you for something amazing that is going to happen. So it's all about proportion, perception of your reality, and knowing that no matter what happens, the darkest night eventually has a day coming afterwards. And the worst storms eventually pass, and you have a beautiful rainbow. We need to remember to appreciate this beauty. And you can have only good without bad. The bad sometimes is given to us for measurement. Thanks to the bad, we can actually measure and appreciate how good it is when it's good. So all of you who actually went through one or two things, and I'm sure you did, because everybody does. And everybody accepts it differently. But think about it for 1 second. It can be now, today, tomorrow, in a week. It doesn't matter. But think about it. These things you went through, how did they shape and prepare you for life that you're living today? Sometimes by making you stronger, sometimes by opening your eyes and making you less naive, and sometimes it's just by showing you that when you can go this low, the high is even higher, and the good is even better. So, if I have anything that I want you to take away from this episode, it's those few things. First, remember to ask the right questions. Ask yourself, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And does it go along in one line with your goals and with who you need to become to reach these goals? This is my favorite question. Does this action or decision go in one line with the person that I need to become to reach my goals? That's the one. Now, the other thing that I want you to take away from this episode is that it's all a matter of perspective. The good and the bad. Some people call it faith. It has a reason. Call it whatever you want to call it. But I'm telling you that in the end, it's up to you how to react and how to perceive it. And I'm not telling you that it's possible not to feel hurt at all when you lose someone. And I really don't mean it in a bad way. Okay? It's really hard to lose someone. Nobody's telling you that you can do that and that's it. It passes. No, that's not my point here. My point here that everything that is happening that is bad is not necessarily as bad as it seems for the first moment. Sometimes it has a deeper meaning. It has a deeper underlying cause of what happened, why, and what it's preparing you for, or what is it saving you from. So remember to keep your perspective as open as possible, and your mind as well. Remember to appreciate the good, even the small, and embrace the bad, learn from it, and let it go and stay with you for a while. That's it for today's episode, guys. I want to thank you a lot for your time and for tuning up for this episode. I hope you took at least one or two good things that you're going to carry on with you on your day-to-day life. And I want to remind you to subscribe and follow us on all our social media platforms, because I'm going to keep sharing small tips and strategies and a lot of good content, I hope. So my name is Dennis, and this was Let's Talk About It. Goodbye.